myself. And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, episode 171, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Baron.
And that smiling man you see in the bottom left corner for the viewers, bottom left corner, is, of course, the publisher and, you've got some other fancy title. You're the COO? No, Chief Creative Officer.
No, Chief Creative Officer, CCO.
CCO.
Yeah.
Mr. Erik Mona.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back, Erik.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you guys again. Always a pleasure to be on the No Direction.
Well, it's nice to have you on because we could just ask you whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that could be the theme of the episode. Erik Mona's here to talk whatever.
No.
Fair enough.
All right, so let's start off with talking about 2017, because we are going to be talking about the future today. But before we can do that, let's talk about how you made 2017, you as in Paizo, not just you personally, although, you can tell us all the things you personally did to make 2017 as successful as it was. But yeah, tell us what 2017 was like for Paizo and how you've managed to stay just ahead of the game constantly.
2017 for Paizo was a really, I think, super, super interesting year. The biggest thing for us in 2017, of course, was the release of the Starfinder role-playing game. Which is like a huge step for Paizo. For the longest, when we started, check old episodes of No Direction for me waxing nostalgic about, the first couple of years of Paizo. But we started as a magazine company, and then, for a little bit, we were like, let's maybe be a book publisher, and then for the longest time, we're like, we're the Pathfinder company, and we're just doing this one game. And then, I think even from the very beginning, it's something we'd always wanted to do, was like, the natural next step is a science fiction game, in particular, a science fantasy game. And I think that if you look at, like, really myself, Jason Bullman, the lead designer, and Lisa Stevens, our CEO, as people who have really been paying attention to the RPG business for frankly, pretty much our whole lives at this point. Each of us kind of had seen other science fiction games that had happened in the past, or even some of the ones that were currently available, and had been like, well, if I ever had a chance to do it, I would do it this way, I would do it differently, or, here's something that I always wanted to try out. And finally, we just kind of made the opportunity to do it. And it's been really breathtaking to see the response, because it's done very, very well for us, and it's brought a whole bunch of new people into the Paizo fold, which is always really exciting.
Now, leading up to Starfinder, a lot of people were excited, but a few months before, we started really noticing this huge upswell of excitement building up for the game. I mean, poor Ryan, I think he got sick of me geeking out about it in our private chats, and so at what point did you guys start to kind of figure out this is going to be a hit?
It's funny, because I think that there's a number of different sort of stages, when you sort of say, oh, it's going to be a hit. It was very clear to me, like, back when we did Pathfinder, I sort of had this whole thing set up in my head, which was like, okay, we're printing this on this number, and if we sell them out by the end of the year, I think we got a hit on our hands. If we sell them out by April, I think we're going to be okay. And we sold it out, within a week or something like that. And so that totally changed all of my expectations and really kind of this scale for like what it could be. And so when we did Starfinder, we did, again, like, we're excited, we're enthusiastic, but it was totally blank slate for us. And so we also wanted to, not overdo it. We didn't want to throw 80,000 copies in the first print run or some crazy thing like that. But even that said, we did, multiple tens of thousands, and we're like, we think we're being really aggressive. We're really not good at picking print runs for stuff that's going to be really popular. And part of that is just, frankly, sort of just a cash flow issue. It's like if you're doing, for example, the first Pathfinder adventure card game volume that we did, the Rise of the Rune Lords thing, big $60 box. Quite honestly, there's a upper limit to the amount a company our size can even afford to print. And so sometimes you're dealing with that. But I don't know why we continue to be cautious with this stuff, but we do, because we want to be safe. And it just blew our expectations out of the water. I mean, it sold out halfway through the first day at Gen Con, which was staggering. I mean, we had thought we were, honestly, it's like we always would love to sell out with an hour left to go on Sunday, you know, so you don't have to ship everything back, but everybody who wants it gets it. And it just kept going so fast. And I think that, you know, we also had a secondary sales booth just for the Starfinder stuff up by the Pathfinder Society area at Gen Con, and I think that actually made it go even faster, because it just, you know, just everyone who wanted it could get it as long as they got it in the first half of the first day. So then we reprinted it, and then we reprinted it again, and so every time I kind of feel like, okay, I think I know what the numbers are for Starfinder, I think this is kind of the new normal, the new level, then we get another order from the distributors, and it's like, oh, now we need to start talking reprint. So I don't, the kind of scary thing about Starfinder, and it's a good kind of scaring, but I don't know what the level is yet. You know, we haven't even yet, like, we've reprinted every Adventure Path volume that we've done, even though we've printed more than the one before. So we haven't yet gotten to the point that we kind of are with Pathfinder now, where we're like, it's kind of a known quantity. You know, it's like we know we can sell this many of volume 3 of a Pathfinder Adventure Path. And if we're wrong by a few hundred, maybe 1,000 units. With Starfinder, I have no idea yet. I mean, it's not going quite as rapidly as it was, you know, the first couple of months, but it's still going so fast, and people are really loving it. I'm blown away. You know, I'm really, really happy by the way it's going. And you can kind of tell, I think, especially you guys who have been paying so close attention to Pathfinder since the beginning. You know, it took us a while to get to the output of Pathfinder. We didn't start with monthly player companions and monthly campaign settings and monthly, you know, we had the AP, we had Adventure Path, we had some periodic, some modules that were almost always, and then we had hardcover books. And then slowly but surely we started adding flip mats and all this other stuff. And so even though I think to a lot of people, when we launched Starfinder with a monthly adventure path, it's a little bit shorter, a little bit, you know, we don't have the monthly player companions and things like that. You know, a lot of people are like, we need more stuff, give us more, without kind of understanding that we really had to earn our way up to the output that we do for Pathfinder. We just start with that. And so you can tell by the fact that, like, well, with the August 2018 solicitations we put out about a month ago, we're taking the Starfinder Adventure Path monthly. Still 64 pages now, but now it's monthly. And so we're starting to be able, we're at the point now where, because we plan out our products so far in advance, where the exuberance and the excitement for the launch products are now starting to make its way into some of the planning we're doing going forward, which is pretty exciting place for us to be.
Okay. Hold a moment, Eric. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. You're starting to do what's called roboting, which is when Skype starts to basically drop your quality of their call. We need to quickly call you back in order to refresh the call. We'll be right back, guys.
We'll see you soon.
And we're back.
Hi, everybody.
Excellent. Now, when you a minute ago, you mentioned that when you were getting ready for Starfinder, you were looking at what some other things, previous games in the genre, current games in the genre did. Do you have any like specific examples of some decisions you made with Starfinder that you think would make it more successful than has been in the past?
Yeah, for sure, because it's stuff I've been thinking about for a long time, and not just me, but others at the company as well. I think back about like what have been the successful science fiction RPGs sort of historically, and I keep coming back to two different ones. One of them was Traveler back in the early days of the industry, and then the other one is really, in my opinion, the West End Star Wars the game. And the one thing that those games had in common, actually they have a couple of things in common, and one is sort of a subset of the other. They had adventures. They had modules that you could play. So yeah, a lot of games come out and it's like, we're going to give you the core rulebook, give you everything you need. We're going to give you maybe one adventure. We're going to give you maybe a GM thing, and maybe we'll give you every 6 months we'll put out an adventure or something. I don't think that's enough support. So a big part of it is, especially when a lot of people don't, not as many people have, miniatures for science fiction and all the other accessories and things like that. We feel like it's really important to provide sort of the full service approach. So you got your flip mats, you've got your adventure paths, you've got scenarios through Starfinder Society, etc. So thing number one was just actually supporting it with regular releases. It sounds crazy, but you have to be putting out products in an RPG for the RPG to have any kind of legacy life at all. When you stop making it, people stop playing it. There's just no question about it. We've seen that time and time again. And so just continuing to put out regular stuff, give people an expected cadence of releases, I think that's really important, because maybe the adventure that came out that month isn't the one that's perfect for you, but if you know there's another one coming a couple of months later, you're going to stick around. But if it's like, well, this is the only adventure there is and I don't like it, unless you're the type of GM who makes everything up yourself, nowhere for you to go with the system. And we figured with science fantasy especially, a lot of people are going to want to have that kind of for lack of a better term, kind of prepared experience, that comes in the form of an adventure path, over having to just kind of make it up whole cloth. I remember the first few times as a kid, trying to sort of make up a superhero adventure and just trying to treat it exactly like a D&D adventure. And they're very, very different, and so it's helpful sometimes to have the script and the map and the NPCs and not to have to do all of that yourself. So thing number one was regular support, in particular with regular adventure support. Thing number two, and this I think has proven to be pretty successful and important for us, is we believe Paizo really, really strongly in organized play. Not that that's the only way to play. Obviously, there's tons of people who are really into conventions or into sort of mass multiplayer offline games, but one of the things that community of organized play people through, in this case the Starfinder Society, it means there's always a game. So if you can't get a regular game group together, you know that if you go to your store on their Starfinder night, you'll probably be able to find a game. It's also an easy way for people to try out the game. And so with an organized play community, that really starts to kind of be the bedrock of the community. As long as that's active, you're never really without the opportunity to play a game. So regular support, organized play support, two huge pieces of the puzzle. There's other little things as well, just in terms of I really, and this is something that really came out of my passion, I guess, is that I really feel like in a fiction game, especially one that's filled with all kinds of aliens, the idea of being an alien or playing the alien is even more enticing than in a fantasy realm where it's like, it's kind of cool to be an orc. But, it's kind of cool to walk into the Star Wars cantina and look around and be like, I could be any of these guys, And so one of the ways that we applied that into Starfinder was with the Alien Archive, we gave you more rules to play characters of those races than we ever have in a Pathfinder bestiary. And that's something we'll be continuing throughout the line. And so the idea then becomes that the monster book's not just a list of things to kill, but it's also a list of things to be, maybe, and that kind of expands the possibilities as well. So I really like that. In some ways, Starfinder frees us from kind of the tropes of fantasy, because fantasy, one of the great things about fantasy and why I think fantasy in some ways has been traditionally more successful in tabletop RPGs is that when you say your barbarian king, takes a swing with his great axe at the orc chieftain while the wizard throws a fireball at the dragon, everyone knows what you're talking about. If you're trying to construct that same sort of lingua franca in science fiction, you're delving into proprietary, the Wookiee and all that. There's not as much common myth and lore that people understand as clearly. And so on the one hand, I do think that makes it a bit of more of a challenge, but it also, for us, it makes it really exciting because it means that we can kind of break the mold a little bit and do some things that are outside the standard sort of sword and sorcery, which of course we love, but it's also fun to try some new things.
How is what you're trying new in Starfinder going to inform what you do with Pathfinder?
That's a good question. I think.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that I'm not sure that I would necessarily break it in between Pathfinder and Starfinder, but more of like a genesis or a progression of what Paizo's done all along. But what Starfinder does is it gives us an opportunity to start fresh, essentially. So, for example, when we were building the core rulebook for Pathfinder, it was very heavily based on the 3.5 core rulebook, because if you remember, when we started Pathfinder, it was more about trying to make it so that we can continue to do the same kind of adventures we'd always done, and the rule set was kind of secondary. And just to play back to what I said 10 minutes ago, we knew that if we were just making 3.5 adventures under the OGL, that if Wizards was no longer printing 3.5, eventually the audience for that was going to drizzle out and die. And so we didn't want to be publishing for essentially a dead game. 4th edition, for a ton of different reasons, wasn't a great option for us. And so that's kind of why we decided, well, we'll give them something to buy, so it's the core rules. And while we're at it, we've been working with this game system for like 10 years. We got some things in it that bug us. Let's fix that stuff. And then even better, let's share it with everybody, get their feedback, and then implement some of their changes as well. But if you look at the actual book, the order in which information is presented is very similar to the order in which information is presented in 3.5. So we innovated how grappling works, in a sense. We innovated getting rid of dead levels and all that, but we didn't have the time to innovate how information is presented in a role-playing game. And so, in part, I think that's why several years later we ended up doing the beginner box, because as great as the core rulebook is, it's almost like a preaching to the converted sort of a thing. It's hard to plop down that 576-page book in front of someone who's got no RPG experience and expect them to understand how to make it work. And that's always been part of the problem with RPGs, is it's so much easier to learn when a friend just kind of shows you how to do it as opposed to learning from scratch. But we wanted to kind of take some of those lessons that we learned through the beginner box in terms of how to present information about, leveling up and, how just trying to do it a lot more visually than just the running text. And so if you look at how we present races in Starfinder, for example, there's a little section that's like, you're a Lashunta. Here's what other people probably think about you, and here's what you probably think about some other people. So and that was something that we did in, I think, Races of Galeria, or Inner-Sea Races. And so, we're always kind of evolving, and this was an opportunity for us to take some of the lessons that we'd learned in the last 8.5 years of Pathfinder and apply them to kind of a core rulebook sort of a situation. So visually, I would say a huge portion of the Starfinder layout and stuff was inspired by different decisions and innovations and things we'd always wanted to try when it came to Pathfinder, but we couldn't. And so I would say that's a big part of it. I think that there are other things that we were talking a little bit before the episode about themes. I think themes are really interesting. They're not in Pathfinder per se, but it's like it wouldn't be too difficult to try to kind of figure a way to map that type of thing over. And then I think that we're always experimenting, and so it may be that if we find ourselves in a position to redo, do a new format for a Pathfinder bestiary, for example, there may be some steps that we take that we took with Starfinder. We're not there right now, but sometime down the road we will be, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot from that. Mechanically, there's some other stuff too, but I think right now we're sort of looking at some of the mechanics as like they're still new, so it's like we're putting those out there. For example, there's not the kind of iterative attacks that Pathfinder has in Starfinder, and we've tried to simplify things. We couldn't go with Pathfinder and be like, hey, guess what, kids? Now monsters and PCs work on totally different rule sets, and you can make monsters super easily. And as awesome as that is, a lot of people will be like, but it doesn't work with Pathfinder, and they'd be right. So part of it is the freedom to try to experiment. And I think the results of that experimentation you'll see being implemented in Pathfinder products, years from now, in the same way that Starfinder has some things that we first put into Pathfinder years ago. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense because you just imitated me and Param and the arguments we have about the virtues of the different monster systems.
Yeah, and honestly, I can see both sides of it.
And you do a great Ryan.
I love. There's this like mindset that says that an RPG set of RPG rules is like the physics engine for that world. And if it works this way for this character, then it should work this way for this monster. Am I channeling one of you guys? I mean, this is
that's
how
me.
I feel,
that's my argument.
in some sense, right? Mm-hmm. But I also understand the degree to which having that level of specificity makes Pathfinder way harder to prep for than it necessarily needs to be. So there's like that part of me that's like, everything works exactly how it should. But there's also that part of me that's like, I just spent 45 minutes on this stat block, and all I wanted to do was figure out a way to have him have 2 spells. And there's a part of me that would be like, why can't I just add 2 spells to this thing? You know what I mean? And so I can see both sides of it. The part of me that's like a little bit unhinged and insane, but also likes to order things in rows. The part of me that makes my Fallout character, keep all of his helmets in one bin and all of his gloves in the other bin, and I love sorting and I love things to be just so. But that's not true of everybody, and then sometimes that can be a real barrier, to new people picking up a game. So with Starfinder, we can kind of do some experimentation on the side of making things simpler that we simply can't do in Pathfinder, because if we did, people would burn down our office.
Now this is
there was a. Go ahead, Barb.
This is a good time to remind everybody that No Direction is filmed live on Twitch. So if you want to join us, we are currently airing at every other Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Paizo time. And so if you have any questions, please, in the chat room, ask us questions. We will gather the questions up throughout the episode and work them into the interview. So if you want to know anything from Mr. Mona, now's your chance. Your one and only chance. Until next time.
Until next time.
Right.
So one of the innovations in Starfinder is your release schedule for the adventure paths. That's starting in August. It's going monthly, but with a 3-volume adventure path.
Yeah.
And first of all, that's a surprise that, after this tried and true 6-part series for so many years with Pathfinder, that with just the second adventure path, or is this going to be the third adventure path for Starfinder?
It's the second.
And you're already flipping the switch.
Yeah. And there's 2 reasons for that, and I might come up with a third and a fourth as I'm riffing on this. But I think that part of it is, candidly, that the appetite for Starfinder stuff is higher than we thought it was going to be. And the good part about having shorter adventures every other month is that we can actually produce them with the staff that we have. And because it's a new system, it gives people an opportunity to play it through. I've often... I love the 6-volume Pathfinder Adventure Paths. We've done 131 of them as of this week. So it's like, great job, Team Paizo. But I know from my own experience and from talking to a lot of people, it takes a lot longer for someone to play a Pathfinder Adventure Path, generally speaking, than it does for us to make a Pathfinder Adventure Path. So it might take us 6 months to publish one. But if you're, in a game group, especially if you're not a little kid, it's sometimes hard to get your game group together 3 times in a month or 2 times in a month, and so you're playing 8 hours a month. That's 8 hours a month is no way to go through an adventure path, my friend. And so it just takes too long. And so we've always kind of wanted to say, well, what if we did them a little bit shorter? But there's also the kind of like, well, but people will freak out. You know, Pathfinder people are used to things being just so and in a particular way. And we could always experiment, and we have in the past. But we thought, well, this is a different game. This is a different opportunity. People aren't as beholden to a particular way of doing things, so let's mix it up a little bit. It allows us to tell shorter stories that I think are going to be more achievable on a quicker basis, which means that people are going to be more likely to check out the next one as opposed to having to wait for, I'm going to skip one, you know, or whatever. And so, it's something that I don't know that we could necessarily get away with without causing a lot of commotion in the Pathfinder side, but it's something we've always kind of wanted to do. When we decided to go monthly with the Starfinder Adventure Path, we also realized that this would give, over the course of the 2 years, 3 different flavors of Adventure Path for people. And right now, one of the benefits of the monthly Pathfinder one is every year we have 2 different themes. So if you don't like the Ruins of Aslan theme, you might instead prefer the Iron Fang Invasion theme, or what have you. With the way Dead Suns is a 6-part adventure path spread out over 12 months, that's kind of it for the outside of Starfinder Society. That's kind of it for official Pathfinder adventures. And if you're not interested in what Dead Suns has to offer thematically or whatever, then you're just kind of waiting. And we thought it'd be more fun to kind of do a couple more rapid fire ones. And we'll definitely get back to doing a 6-month one. I think it's even easier now that 6-volume one. Now that we're monthly, I think it's less of a stretching one story out a little further than I'd like. Mm-hmm. And so when Rob McCreary, who's the creative director for Starfinder, and his team came to me and said, hey, we want to pitch this idea of doing 2-3 volume adventure paths, I got pretty excited. I think there might be a spoiler in there I accidentally revealed, but there you go.
Now, there's a little bit of precedence for this on the Pathfinder side, maybe not branded AP, but several of, when you were still doing the module line bi-monthly, there were several of those module collections that were 3-4 volumes. So your team has some experience doing the shorter ones, and a lot of those are fairly well beloved.
Yep, absolutely. We've always, even going back decades to being a kid playing D&D, I always loved the linked adventures, and back in the Dragon or Dungeon magazine, we had all the linked adventures, even not the APs, but like short 3-fers and stuff like that. I like that. I think it in a way, it's like a full 6-volume adventure pass, like a marriage, and a 3-month adventure pass, like a torrid dating affair. And so you don't. It's not a forever commitment, is what I guess I'm trying to say. And so it gives you the opportunity to try out different things. And I guess I'm coming off as quite lecherous with that analogy. But anyway,
I'm working out the math of like a marriage is twice as long as a tryst. That's
these days
your analogy doesn't work mathematically.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know either, you guys. Sometimes they fall apart. It's a live show.
Okay.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah.
All right. Question from the audience. There we go. Mortunados? Yes, Mortunados is asking, will the 3-volume APs all start at level 1?
The first one does.
Okay.
Ooh, interesting.
You just
I don't want to spill other people's tidbits, but I will say that one of the things we would never do, and because we never have in Pathfinder, is to start an adventure path mid-level or something like that. It's just something we just don't. We've thought about it. We just don't feel comfortable doing it. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, crap.
You all right?
Yeah, that's just like that. The answers kind of just threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting it. Okay. The Joker is asking if there's going to be anything about adding spaceships to. Oh, this is getting really specific on the Starfinder front of things. But okay, it's a question. Adding spaceships to the economy. I think the issue here is In the community, there's an issue where they don't know how much these spaceships cost because they're always
Yeah.
getting build points, not credits.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
The honest truth is I don't know the answer to that question. I know it's come up. We've definitely discussed when we're like casting forward for different product ideas and things. We've definitely discussed a deeper dive on starships and how to build them, how to buy them, all that kind of stuff. So I know that this is a known issue with the team. I'm afraid I'm not quite granular enough to know what the current plan is for it. So. Sorry.
All right. Well, Justin Franklin's question is good and straightforward. What are all the Pathfinder hardcover releases for 2018?
Justin Franklin. Well, we've announced one of them, which is Planar Adventures, which is a book I'm very, very excited about. Been looking over James Jacobs' shoulders as he's been focusing a lot on the sort of for lack of a better term, I guess I would say the settingness of it. We're not really presenting it as a setting book. It's an RPG book, but it is kind of a setting because it's the Great Beyond, and it's shared in our sense by all the different worlds of the multiverse and stuff. So it's very much like, here's a deal with this plane, and here's a deal with this plane, and here's rules associated with those things. And I was just working on my vacation. I was working on some of the back articles for the Pathfinder Worldscape comic that I write, and I was like, James, what do you got on demi-planes? And he sent me the whole demi-plane chapter, which I just like shoved aside my own writing for a little bit and just sat, sipping a Mai Tai on the lanai and Maui reading a pre-release James Jacobs demi-plane write-ups and stuff, and very cool. So we've announced that that's coming out in June. We're going to be doing a bunch of pocket guides as well. Those have been really, really popular. So between January and June, we've got Bestiary 3, Advanced Class Guide, Bestiary 4, Ultimate Magic, and then in July we're also doing Bestiary 5 and Ultimate Combat. So we're getting, we're trying to get to the point where we've done pretty much all of them. Still kind of in the middle, but I keep seeing people saying, when is this going to come out in the paperback version? And the fact of the matter is we're kind of just going as quickly as we can. So we're doing those things as well. We're not quite ready to talk about the summer release or the winter release yet, so that's that. On the Starfinder side, we have the Pact Worlds book coming out in 2018, and that guy is coming out in March, and I've got it right here. So this is like the printer sample. It's one of the very, I think there's like 4 copies in the entire United States right now. And so, it's got cool chapter openers like normal. I was talking before the show a little bit because I literally got this like right before I signed on with these guys, and I was looking through, and it's like in each of the planets comes with its own theme, so this is the Tempered Pilgrim theme, which goes along with let's see, what planet is that? I'm going to say that's Akaton. No, it's Adari. So it's the Kasatha homeworld ship, and each one of those has got a theme. It's got there's spaceships in here, there's equipment, there's NPCs. So pretty awesome. Again, sort of a setting book, but we're trying to kind of, with Starfinder, the line between, this is a setting book and this is a rule book is a lot more fluid than it has been traditionally with Pathfinder. So I'm interested to see what people think of this one. We're really excited about it. Plenty of stuff for players, obviously a lot for GMs in there as well. So that's coming out in March. We've got Pawn Collection for that coming out in May, and then we announced in Starfinder for July a hardcover book called the Starfinder Armory, and that's going to be a big equipment book with lots more cybernetics, guns, melee weapons, magic items, all that kind of fun stuff, power armor, because you demanded it. So that's kind of the major stuff that at least that we've announced so far.
Going back
so if that's coming out in July, does that mean that there's going to be a Pathfinder book that comes out at Gen Con?
There will be a Pathfinder book that comes out at Gen Con. Yep, absolutely. We haven't said what it is yet, but we'd be a fool to not release a Pathfinder book at Gen Con. I think that what's going to end up happening is that Armory book, which is technically a July release, will kind of become the default Gen Con release for Starfinder, in part because Gen Con, I believe, is like August 3rd or something this year.
Yeah.
It's really early. Whenever it shifts around and hits the front of August, basically steals a month from my team to do a release on that. But we've been on top of them for a while. So lots of very, very interesting and exciting stuff. We're just not quite ready to talk about it publicly yet.
Going back to the Planar Adventures, is that going to continue the trend of the recent RPG line of also being directly tied into Pathfinder's campaign setting?
Well, insofar as the Great Beyond, which is to say the Maelstrom and, the Abyss and all that, is Pathfinder's multiverse, essentially, the Outer Planes and the Inner Planes. Yes. But what it isn't is like, okay, so you're in Absalom, and, it's not on Golarion. It's kind of the other worlds beyond Golarion. And so, in a sense, it's almost like a collection of lots of little mini thematic campaign settings, each with their own little rules elements and stuff. But, yeah, it does kind of continue, if you will, the trend of, like, where... I would say it's a similar approach to Book of the Damned, where it's like, unapologetically, it's like, this is the Pathfinder bad guys. This is the Pathfinder multiverse.
Did the stream crash?
It did not.
Okay, good. Thank goodness. We have there's a book we don't name because it seems to unexpectedly cause episodes to get canceled whenever we tried to do anything with it.
Was it the one I just named?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that where you both went?
We all cringed.
Yeah. But actually, a follow up to that, and kind of leading into a question I wanted to ask you about next is, considering you're also working on a project that has to do with theoretically Pathfinder's multiverse, are we going to see any influence of Worldscape in the Planar Adventures?
A little bit. Like I said, I got James to send me the Demi-Plane chapter, and I just cried like a little tear of pride when I saw that he put a little paragraph for the Worldscape in there. So it's like, it's official, it's a Demi-Plane created by Nex in the Pathfinder sort of planar realms. Beyond that, not much. I mean, Worldscape as a comics project is really about jamming with Dynamite and mixing up some of their characters with our characters, and it all kind of exists within a very tight legal framework and within this comic that's being done by two people. It's certainly not outside the realm of possibility that somewhere down the road we might do like a Worldscape book or something, but just given that would involve multiple companies that own different pieces of it, it would probably be its own standalone thing. We own the Worldscape lock, stock, and barrel. I could be like, but there's people from the Red Planet, but I couldn't be like, and it's John Carter. I mean, it's like there's a line of what we can say without getting into partnerships with other companies, and right now those partnerships are focused on the comic.
Yeah. Now, are you going to be? You mentioned you were working, so you're going to be returning to wrap more Worldscape?
Well, what it is it's actually the 4 issues that were part of the Humble Bundle from a few months ago that had the miniatures in it as well.
Right.
Those we need to fulfill to people in the next couple of months, and so essentially the files are going to the printer this week, and so I was doing the finishing touches on the back matter. I wrote the scripts a long time ago. The storyline very much leaves things open for a continuation if we decide to do another series down the road, but it's more appropriate to say I've been finishing up Worldscape-related projects that people are already aware of rather than kind of working on some big new thing.
So it's still a couple of months. I was looking forward to those.
It's a Q1. We're shooting for the first quarter of 2018, and we're not quite out of that yet. So, yeah. And their printing turnaround's really quick. So we'll see. Don't have an official day when we're expecting all the miniatures to be here, but I wouldn't be tremendous surprised if things kind of go a little tiny bit, but we're more or less on track.
I'll get the miniatures when I get the miniatures, but I'm looking forward to the comics.
Yeah. They've been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really enjoy writing them. I did the 3 this time around. I did a crossover with Herbert, the animator, the Lovecraft character that Dynamite's done a comic with. I teamed him up with my Goblin character Gribbet from the first story I ever wrote back in the day with the Pathfinder Goblins. I did Vampirella, which is pretty cool and interesting comic character. And then we tied it in with the Dynamite's Swords of Sorrow, big crossover that they did a few years ago with a lot of their women sword and sorcery characters. So one of the major characters from that plays into this kind of round. And Chris Terry, who's senior editor and is a big Edgar Rice Burroughs guy, he had previously written the Tarzan crossover, and so this time around I gave him the Deja Thoris, John Carter's girlfriend. He wrote a story about her and the worldscape, and he got real excited because he loves Burroughs, and he even snuck in some H. Rider Haggard stuff because he is a giant nerd for all the little Jungle books. So he was perfect writer for that, and then I did the other three. And then in the normal series, Fire and Bones, right now, Crystal Fraser's writing that. And so Crystal's writing, I think that starts actually this month, in February here, and it's a backup Pathfinder feature that I'm writing. Yeah. So lots of comic stuff going on.
We haven't announced it, but we have been coordinating having Crystal on the show, right, Ryan?
Yes, she's supposed to be our guest for the next episode, mostly to talk about the comic.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yep. We're looking forward to that.
You should. She's been doing a fabulous job on it. She's so funny, you guys. She's got just a sense of humor. This is going to be the funniest comic arc I think that we've done so far, but it's also, it's legit Pathfindery. Like there's I'm not going to give it away. I'll let her talk about it, but I think you guys will have a blast talking to her about that series.
Justin Slutter has a question that's kind of interesting. Do you think that there might ever be an adventure or PFS adventure set in Worldscape?
Yeah. I think that would be pretty awesome. It's again, it does involve potentially working with different licensees and things like that, and it quite honestly might not be worth the hassle of having for a PFS scenario. But I've also been very careful what I've been putting into the comics, sort of public domain stuff. So I don't really need, Edgar Rice Burroughs characters to make it work. It's just much cooler if you have some of that stuff. So some of the live streams that we've done online have been me running Worldscape type games, and I've got tons of notes. It wouldn't be tremendously difficult for me to translate that stuff into an adventure. It's certainly not something I'm working on right now. Mm-hmm. My favorite thing to write is adventures, and I haven't had as much opportunity to do that in the last, 10 years practically. I did Howl the Carrot King, back in the day with Let's Fire. That was the last adventure that I wrote, full adventure. I also did levels in Emerald Spire and levels in Thorn Keep and things, and I really am looking forward to having the opportunity to write like a full standalone adventure again. And so I would say that were I to take on a pure writing project, specifically like a Pathfinder RPG product, it probably would be an adventure, and something involving necks and all that would almost certainly be involved. So whether that involves a Worldscape or not, I don't know. I'm actually kind of at this point where, outside of finishing up the last few segments of the Starfinder adventure path, I don't have a freelance assignment looming over me, and I just kind of want to soak in on that for a while and just kind of go to sleep without a guilty conscience for maybe a month. Sounds really appealing.
Now, you just got back from Hawaii.
I know, and I'm already tired. It's 3 days. Day one, it was funny. I was just talking to Sarah Robinson about this. Like, day one, people came at me with, like, I'd like to call it emergencies, proto-emergencies, and quasi-emergencies. Like machine gun fight, like I was going over the top, in World War I. It was just problem. And the first day I'm back from Hawaii, I'm just like, hey, man, this is what you do. You just like this. Like I'm the dude, from Big Lebowski. And now it's 3 days in, and I'm starting to, I wouldn't say I need a new vacation, but I do need to go to sleep without feeling guilty about being late on a deadline.
So we were talking about the tie-in fiction with the comics.
Go ahead.
What? You got roboted for a second there, so what?
I said that I didn't even get a chance to go to sleep without a guilty conscience on my vacation because I still owed Dynamite a couple of articles. So now that's done. Hopefully I'll go to sleep. But you were saying something more interesting than that.
Well, we were talking about tie-in fiction. We got a couple of questions about the Tales line. Real Masked Ferret wants to know if there will be a Starfinder Tales line. Bard Wannabe wants to know if Pathfinder Tales are coming back anytime soon.
Okay, let me hit those one at a time. No plans for a Starfinder fiction line right now. Not that we wouldn't want to do them, we just don't have a partner for it. Basically what ended up happening is we decided to partner with Tor on the Pathfinder Tales line because they're Tor and they know the industry and they could surely get better distribution for our books than we were able to get for ourselves. Like, we really know how to distribute role-playing game books, and we understand the hobby market, and we understand how to sell hardcover books profitably, hardcover game books profitably in the book trade. But, you know, after over 33 Planet Stories reprint science fiction books back in the day, and about the same number of Pathfinder Tales novels, we just always felt like there was some secret to it that we just weren't quite grasping, and if we could just side with the right partner, they would be able to kind of figure it out. And to make a long story short, they didn't really figure it out. And so that left us kind of saying, well, know that we're not great at this. Like, the novels are all really good, but the sales and the distribution, we're not as good at this as we'd like to be. Surely we can find another person or another partner to work with, and that we've been talking with a few people, but we just haven't kind of found that match yet. And in the meantime, we're just kind of rocking forward on other projects that are candidly more profitable and better use of our time. And also on top of that, you know, one of the things that 2017 saw was a fair amount of turnover with key staff members here. So, for example, one of the people who was James Sutter, who was kind of my main fiction guy. And so for the longest time, it was like, you just run the fiction. It kind of he did a great job with it. With him not here, I've got other people who might be able to step into that role, but they're currently doing other very important things. So part of it is just kind of bring the staff into the right place, you know, here at Paizo, and part of it is finding the right outside partner. And because we don't have that partner for Pathfinder, which we actually have a half a dozen books ready to go, we're not even really seriously talking about Starfinder until we find that right partner. So right now, there's not a plan for Starfinder fiction, and Pathfinder fiction, unfortunately, is still in a little bit of a holding pattern. Got a couple of big projects that we're trying to just kind of get through, and once we've gotten through those, I'm going to take a very serious hack at trying to figure out what to do about this fiction. The part that I know that there are a lot of readers, a lot of fans who are like kind of left out in the lurch, and they really want their Pathfinder fiction, and I feel like I really want to get that to them. I'm actually really also concerned about the 5 or 6 authors who have orphaned books with us right now, and I feel really horrible holding on to those things because they're really good books, and we will find a way to get those things out. Just sort of not there yet.
Yeah, that's saying that you've got just a catalog of unpublished books. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'm not sure if that's the answer Justin wanted, but that's kind of where we're at.
People would rather an honest answer than the answer they want. That's my opinion.
Well, and that, I mean, that's... I don't know if it's just that part of our hobby is, reading each other and I don't want to say, like, I think gamers can sniff BS better than just about anybody else. So there's really no point in just updating and be like, well, it's going to be great, you guys. It will be great eventually, but it's like, I don't know the road between here and greatness. That's a
Well, let's talk about some licensed property that is probably going to lead to greatness. You have been partnered up to make Kingmaker. So what can you tell us about the state of Kingmaker right now?
Okay, so Kingmaker, our partners at Owlcat are putting together Kingmaker. It is a sort of I want to say isolinear, it's like that sort of 2/3 view of like Fallout 2 and Fallout and stuff like that. It feels really legitimately like a game of that era, but with better graphics. That seem more like today. The funny thing about Kingmaker for me is I really hadn't had much of an opportunity to play it for the first couple of months while it was in development. And finally, when we did the all-night, 24-hour Extra Life charity marathon the other couple months ago. Dan Tharp, social media manager who was running that program and running the stream, lives a block and a half away from me in Seattle and doesn't have a car. So I'm like, Dan, I'll drive you in. And more to the point, I will stay with you for the entire time, and we'll hang out at work for 24 hours on a Saturday. It'll be awesome. And I was running an 8-hour game, so that took a significant part of it. But for almost the entire other time, I really had nothing to do. So I sat and I played Kingmaker for hours and hours and hours. And I'm really, really impressed with it. It's really, really fun. It's really cool. It feels like the gameplay feels like those games that I used to play, back in the day. That we're all familiar with, and it felt really comfortable and really good. And there were some known characters who showed up, and I'm tooling around the Stolen Lands and checking in with my viziers and things like that, and I was really impressed with it. They're doing a great job.
I was really bummed when I found out that I had the early bird level and not the early access level. So when the beta came out, I was like, well, how do I get in on this? I want to give this a try. Yeah, so I have to wait till August like most of everybody else that backed this Kickstarter.
Well, I think it's going to be worth the wait. And one of the things that sort of a behind-the-scenes change here that I'm not sure everybody outside of Paizo really understood is about 6 months ago, I would say, we shifted Mark Moreland, who's been a long-time developer for us, over to what we call a franchise manager, and that means that he's basically in charge of the continuity of Pathfinder, which he kind of has been. He's the in-house sort of continuity wonk, but now what we've done is we've taken a lot of his development work and given it to other people so that he can really focus on that full time. And so he has literally been playing this game like every day for hours and hours, taking notes and doing changes. And you can't. You referred to this as like Ben and Sarah, and those are not good Pathfinder names. And like so he's really like locked in making this game not just an awesome game but also like an authentically Pathfinder experience, and he's doing that now with like things like the miniatures line, WizKids, and a lot of our licensed stuff, but also some of our in-house stuff as well. So I got to give kudos to Mark for really putting a ton of effort into making sure that this game is exactly what Pathfinder fans are going to want, and he's doing a great job. And it's just like we've got a Pathfinder game coming out that has got writing in it by Chris Avallone, who's written half of these original games we all loved anyway, and that's exciting. So it's like I would love sometimes to go back to the version of me who is like in 1997 or whatever playing Fallout 2 and just loving every second of it and being like, hey buddy, the lead writer on this game is going to write a Pathfinder game one day. And my first question would probably be, well, what's Pathfinder? But it's just kind of amazing. And so there's an element where one of the things that I love about some of our licensed partner products is when it comes to a Pathfinder product, like I was there in the pitch meeting, and I was there in the arguments between the developers and the designers, and I was there when we had to make the agonizing decision to cut that spread because there was too many pages in the book. And I just know so much about how these things were birthed, how they were made, that by the time it finally hits my desk, it's kind of like, okay, there's that thing I've been working on for 6 months. When something like the Kingmaker video game comes in here and I'm attacking it like probably a fan would, it's just a different level of excitement for me. So I'm very, very, very excited about the Kingmaker video game faux show.
And as far as you know, it's still on track, right? It has a delivery date of August.
Yeah, as far as I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
As far as I know.
We've been getting regular updates, so I have no reason to believe that they're not on track.
Actually, I was super surprised with how, like, usually...
Yeah, I do have a certain level of cynicism when it comes to video game projects. They often seem to slip and slide a little bit. Everything I know says that they're on track for this thing.
I was super surprised that it was as far along as it was when you guys even announced it, and then to see the updates of it throughout the months and what you've shown at the cons and such. It's just been like, wow, this is a real thing. This isn't a fever dream.
Yeah, and I think that part of that is that we saw that a little bit with Obsidian as well, you know. And I think it's like there's a big difference between, hey, we're an established studio with lots of resources, and we're gonna put 20. I guess that's something like 23. They got more people working on Pathfinder than I do. You know what I mean? And so it's like they can really produce an astonishing amount of stuff in a relatively short period of time, and it has been really exciting. I mean, I remember, it's kind of funny. I remember when we first met the guys from Owlcat. This was like not last year's Gen Con, but I think it was the Gen Con before, and the representative from them came. And he was like, well, let me show you some concept art that we did, you know. And I'm in the meeting with Sarah Robinson, our senior art director, and they're showing us this concept art, and it like looks just as good as Wayne Reynolds. You know, it's like I've never seen another artist kind of do the Wayne Reynolds style, if you will. Not to say that he's ripping off Wayne, but like these two characters plausibly exist in the same world. You know, they look like they're designed to the same aesthetic. And Sarah and I just like looked across the table and we're just like, you know, like, yeah, we're doing this deal. These guys are great. And the stuff that they showed us was just beautiful. And now some of those characters that we saw in that meeting come to life. It has been just really gratifying and really fun. I think people are going to really dig the game.
Now, this question was answered already in chat, but a question from Timidius, Tim Nightingale, everyone's favorite.
Hey, Tim. Long time.
He was asking, will Kingmaker go to Steam?
I think so, yeah. I don't quote me 100% because that is now other people's job to know that type of thing. But, yeah, I'm fairly certain that that's the case.
According to Dalvin in chat, yes.
Yeah.
He's quoting the Kickstarter, and it says that it will be on Steam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my memory as well.
And on GOG, which I don't even know what that is.
GOG is Good Old Games. They're a really great retro service. A lot of the very games that he was talking about, their best home right now is on GOG, so it makes a lot of sense. Like that's where you can go play some of those old Infinity Ware games and still get them.
Now, Lone Dwarf's been very patient with this question. He would like to know if there will be a license deal for Starfinder or Pathfinder with Roll20.
I'm trying to figure out what I can say.
Okay. Your silence says so much.
Well, no, it's just that we have been talking to a lot of the different virtual tabletops lately, and have had very fruitful conversations with all of them. And I'm just not exactly sure which ones are in what phase of development. Of course, we're on the Smiteworks, the one Fantasy Grounds already. We're working on it. We're working on it.
Speaking of working on it, is the in-house virtual tabletop, is it dead? It was announced a few years ago and never seemed to go that far.
Is anything ever truly dead in this world of ours? Yeah, it's pretty much dead. I mean, the code all is still there. It still exists, but I think that was I think we ended up maybe biting off a little more than we can chew on that one. And in the meantime, a lot of these other companies are just doing it so much better. So we're focusing most of our efforts in that space and making partnerships with people who already know how to do this rather than trying to do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And along similar lines, Joker Plays wants to know if does Paizo have any aspirations for creating an online one-stop for all up-to-date Pathfinder/Starfinder content along the lines of D&D Beyond?
Isn't that just the SRD?
Yeah, I mean we have the SRD. Although we're way behind in updating our own SRD, it's like that lesson of, well, we can do everything ourselves from the ground up, or maybe there's other people who can do it better. And I think that right now the tech team is focusing on other sort of more emergency issues, like being able to ship our products and all of that kind of stuff. And we're looking at some other solutions for the reference guide. Candidly, we don't have any plans to do any kind of like subscription service, or here's everything that you need for the game in one magical thing. It's like we have PDFs and we have books, and right now that's kind of the extent of it. some of the, like, we've been working with, for example, Hero Lab on Realmworks and potentially getting some of our stuff on there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that material coming out. But no, we're not. We don't really have a D&D Beyond style thing in the offing, at least for the time being.
Switching gears completely, King of Brock wants to know if you know anything else about the Sean Astin and Wesley Snipes Starfinder RPG setting.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. It's being put together by my friends Lou Agresta and Rowan Barton, and Lou kind of got in with he's been friends with Sean for a long time, and through an unrelated business venture, kind of came into the orbit of Wesley Snipes, and they were talking about creative stuff, and got Wesley involved in the project. And then I think when he was telling his friend Sean about it, Sean was like, "Well, I'll be involved too. That'd be fun." And so it's called Grimmer Space, and it's like a space horror setting that is compatible with Starfinder. I'm writing the introduction to it. I haven't seen it yet myself. I've seen some of the art, which looks really cool. Some of Lou was telling me some of the ideas that he'd gotten from Wesley Snipes, which is like so weird for me even to say that, but they sound cool too. You know, Snipes is like really into martial arts and is a big fantasy. He's a nerd essentially, and I don't think I'm revealing too much to say that Sean Astin's also kind of a nerd, and so like it's weird to be like, oh, and there's these Hollywood people that are involved in this, but it kind of makes sense, you know, in both of their cases. And so I'm just like right now, just sort of like everybody else, sitting back and kind of, I can't wait to get the manuscript and read it, and you know, I'll write what I think about it in my intro. I'm proud of those guys for putting it together. I think it's really cool that that Starfinder has engendered such interest sort of across the board, and that, you know, if you don't love the Pact World system that we have as our campaign setting, there's other options for you out there. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it. I haven't seen the manuscript yet. But I have it on good authority that, you know, Lou's texted me a few times and with some snippets, or just, I know he's deep into it, so it's exciting.
I just hope that there's 2 new races. One of them is just Sean Astin, and one of them is just Wesley Snipes, and all the classes are based on their most famous characters.
I will keep an eye and see if that's in the book or not.
Can you mention it to Wesley Snipes if you happen to talk to him?
No, just to be clear, I'm just the schmo they got to write the introduction. Yeah. I'm not allowed to count.
All right. Now we are coming up on our hour. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, the internet seems to want to eat Erik. So before it disconnects you involuntarily, is there anything you want to finally shout out to or bring some attention to before we wrap this up?
No, not really. I mean, you know, let's see, where are we at now? January. Let me just look at the schedule. We've got the Bestiary 3 Pocket Edition and Advanced Class Guide. Pocket Editions will be in stores in a couple of weeks, so that's something to look forward to. Still kind of working our way to the end of the Ruins of Aslant Adventure Path. I guess I'll say one thing, which would be a recommendation for when you have Crystal in here, is to talk to her about the War for the Crown Adventure Path, which she's been instrumental in putting together. Her adventure outlines are fantastic. I'm really, really excited about what she's got in store for that adventure path. So, you know, I'm just kind of looking off to the side here of like what we've got in January and February, and for my money, that first installment of the War for the Crown in February is a really key release that everyone should pay attention to, because it's going to be really cool. And I think I'm probably not revealing too many spoilers to say that by the time that campaign is over, it will significantly kind of change some elements of Taldor as a country. So that's also pretty interesting to me to see that happen and see how people react to what's in store there.
Now, we've heard those kinds of promises before from other companies. Will you, like, are you going to follow up on this? Is this a serious promise?
Well, what's the promise? Did I just make a promise?
That it's going to, that this adventure path will seriously change the campaign setting, or chunk of
everything. Well, I mean, the premise of the adventure path is the king dies and who's going to be the new leader of the country. So, at the very least, something's going to change. I guarantee, I promise, there will be lasting impacts from the War for the Crown adventure path, not just on Taldor, but on the entire campaign setting.
All right. Go ahead, Barb.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, yeah, we're super excited about getting to talk to Crystal again. Every time she comes on the show, it's fantastic.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
All right. Lone Dwarf is asking, how is Pathfinder 2.0 going?
Oh, my.
It's fantastic. Come on by for a playtest. Be happy to run it for you. No comment.
Actually, speaking of playtests, are the open playtests on the hardcovers, is that a thing of the past?
No, in fact, one thing that's kind of interesting that I was thinking of maybe suggesting that people check out is our lead designer Jason Bullman just posted a thread on Paizo.com today about the Shifter and about Ultimate Wilderness, and sort of taking into account some of the criticisms of that class and some of the challenges that they face putting it together, and some solutions, and he's posted a number of different solutions to that. And in that write-up, he basically says that it was a mistake not to have play-tested that class publicly. So public play-tests are by no means a thing of the past. In fact, I think that I would expect to see some more of them in relatively short order, in fact. It's something that's worked really well for us in the past, shifted around some things in the last couple of years that made it so that we didn't know. We sort of wondered if maybe we needed it as robust as we'd done in the past, and the answer is yeah, we did. So look for more playtests soon.
Excellent. All right,
I'm just trying to find that post now, because I did see that there was an FAQ up that changes how often the Shifter can wild shape, and that's part of it. Yeah, the thread is, let's see if I can find what it's called here. The thread, which I thought I had up, which I don't, is probably on the main sidebar on Paizo.com because it's burning up. It's something like Changes to the Shifter, I think is the name of the thread. It's called... So he didn't start the thread? He just posted in it? He started it and posted in it. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I found Changes to the Shifter. There you go. 26 people have marked this as a favorite. Well, and that's 5 since we started the podcast. So, hooray. Basically, he just kind of comes clean with some of the challenges and some of the maybe missteps that were made, and then proposes some options and says, yeah, going forward, we really should put a little bit more just put a little more attention into a public playtest when we're doing something as important as a core class. So I would recommend checking that out for sure. It's interesting. It's frankly nice to hear a company admit their mistakes every once in a while. Yeah, here I'm looking at it right now. Changes to the Shifter. It's in the general discussion folder on Paizo.com.
Now,
indeed.
Now to shift things to a little bit more of a positive note, if somebody wanted to get... okay, so are you going to be doing any cons soon that our fans might be able to...
Am I going to be doing any cons?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go to... Let me see. I'm going to be at... Toy Fair, which is an industry con that probably most people can't go to, but I'll be there in February. Then we're going to do the Gamma Trade Show in March, which is again a trade show. After that, we've got PaizoCon in May. We've got UK Games Expo. I'm going to UK Games Expo. I'll be there. I'll be at New York Comic Con in October. I'll be at Gen Con. It looks like I'm probably not doing Origins this year, but Paizo will be at Origins. One of the things that we're going to try and do in the next several months is have a convention appearances section on Paizo.com that says who's going to be where, because it's not just me who travels for the show or for the company. It's a lot of other people as well. We got a lot of different cons around the country and around the world. But the biggest public ones that I'm going to come to in the near future are UK Games Expo and PaizoCon. And if you're in the Portland area this weekend, I'm going to head down for there's a meetup for the Glass Cannon podcast where there's some PFS stuff. So I'm going to be down there for that. And that's just a vacation for me because I like going to Portland. So I'll be there hanging out.
Excellent. And if people want
to figure out... No, go ahead, Barbie.
Sorry. If people want to follow your work, where should they keep up with you?
You can find me on Twitter at Erik Mona. You can find me on Facebook at Erik Mona, author. I've got a website at erikmona.com, although I don't update it very often. And that's probably your best bet.
Portland's a 43-hour drive for me.
Yeah, come on out. It's going to be great.
Well,
all right, so I need friends in Minnesota to put me up, and then maybe Wyoming? I don't know American geography. Your country has so many states.
50.
I know.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 things that aren't quite states. They're districts.
Maybe even a couple of other ones if you include things like Guam. But that's probably going too deep.
Americans.
I know.
Guys.
What's up with them?
All right. As always, thank you so much for coming on the show, Erik. It's been
thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure. I love chatting with both of you guys and all the people in the chat room. So thanks, everybody, for your time, and thanks for supporting Paizo and playing Pathfinder and Starfinder. We literally couldn't do it without you, so really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Everybody, we will be right back after this to talk about some of this news that we just talked about. Later. And we're back. Never mind the video. It'll fix itself in a second.
Oh.
Hi, guys. Just wanted to say goodbye. I just got cut off.
Oh. Bye, Erik.
Bye.
Bye, Erik. Thank
See
you.
you later.
Okay, so that was a lot of exciting stuff that we just talked about. But we wanted to also talk about some other very specific stuff. Right, Ryan?
Yes.
Yes. And we're back. Okay, I'm going to edit this all out, okay? Quiet for a few seconds. And we're back.
Is the banter saying? I'm sorry, Pam.
Oh my God! No, Ryan, he's dropping the balls and everything.
By the very specific things. You mean we want to talk about the shifter, right?
Right.
Okay. Now I know what to come back to. Sorry about this.
Okay. Let's try this again. Okay, all the people watching the live show. Shh, this didn't happen. And we're back.
In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about all the latest happenings for the Pathfinder role-playing game from Paizo and from significant third-party publishers. We are going to start off with that very post that Erik was just talking about at the end of his interview segment by Jason Bullman. Now, I haven't read the full post. I read the FAQ, which really highlights the main changes that were made to the shifter class. One of them is very straightforward. The shifter's class counts as magic starting at 3rd level.
Right,
and this was just an oversight.
Yeah, this was just a bug. Like this was just an omission. They also
because it was able
to
overcome all other kinds of damage reduction except for slash magic, which is one of the most common kinds of damage reduction. So,
and
that one was just a small one.
And they also mentioned another omission in the post, but not the FAQ, because this will be added to the FAQ as it's being developed. But there were some other omissions, like the fact that owls don't have a fly speed. But now they will.
But then the big change is to wild shape. They're changing the number of uses and the duration. So previously it was once per day. And Param, I believe that was your major point of contention, right?
It really was. It's like it broke the fantasy of the class that, at least it had hours to work with. But it was just like a one and done thing of your core ability. Is you should always be able to bear. Like, being bear is the most important part of being a bear shifter. I say bear as a stand-in for any other shifter. If you wanted to be owl, if you wanted to be a wolverine, if you wanted to be like a really vicious mallard, then you be the most awesome mallard you can be. And that's a shout out to a very specific fan, by the way.
Big fan of mallards?
Oh, there's a very specific fan who's a big fan of ducks. It's awesome. But if you wanted to be a bear, I want to be a bear, and I want to be a bear all the time. If I'm signing up for shifter, I'm signing up to be the bear dude, or my character is going to bear all the time, if I'm fighting without being bear, then I'm not being my class. So the fact that you had to wait till like realistically like 8th level to get that 2 times a day to make it kind of work was just like, yeah, the math worked, but man, you were taking the fantasy of this class and just really handcuffing it. And this small change will make a big difference. I still recommend that you go with the archetype that we recommended if you really, really want to be an effective shifter. It does limit you to the 1 form, but this solves a major gripe of the class.
And just to go into the technical of it, it's remove once per day from the first sentence, and remove the 4th sentence from the shifter's wild shape. Anyway, I'm sure we don't have to find out whatever that sentence is, and replace the second to last sentence with a shifter can use wild shape for a number of hours per day equal to her shifter level plus her wisdom modifier.
Okay, so that's
a big. Does not need to be consecutive.
That wisdom modifier,
1 hour increments.
That wisdom modifier is another is a tag. It was just shifter level. So now with the wisdom modifier, that means a starting level shifter, when they get this, that's like what, probably 7 at minimum, 6 at minimum, 7 probably, 8 possibly. Use hours a day.
Putting a lot into wisdom.
I know. Okay, realistically 6 to 7, depending on how much you value your wisdom. I don't value it very much at all.
And for abilities that function based on uses of wild shape, each hour of wild shape counts as a use. That's huge.
Yeah. So you can be bear almost all the time, at least during your typical adventuring day, especially when you need to be a bear. I'm a bear. And so that just, like, basically from the second you get 4th level and you get your wild shape, it is usable all the time that you need it effectively.
Now, my main gripe about the class was that the flavor of the aspects did not reflect the mechanics. That's not addressed here, but archetypes can fix that.
Yes. It
needed an FAQ to fix what you the issues that you had with it.
I had the archetype problem was a problem. I agreed with you. They were so minor, in the fact that they could only be used limited times was a big deal. Like I still feel that those abilities are so minor that you just leave them on all the time, and that at least will save the fact. I mean, they barely have a numerical effect. They're so little that you're going to forget you even have those abilities on your character sheet. So if they could just be on all the time, that would solve that problem, and it's not going to throw the game balance off with the shifter at all. But this at least takes the core part of it that was really crippling it and just finally lets it be what it was meant to be. You still have to wait till you get to 4th level. Until then, you're still like kind of just the hybrid-y, I've got cool claws class. But 4th level isn't that long of a wait in the game of Pathfinder. And then you can finally be what you were supposed to be.
And then, Param, the other major bit of news, which, again, we talked about with Erik Mona, but I think there's stuff we could talk about as fans, and that is the Starfinder adventure paths go into only 3 parts for its 2nd adventure path.
That is so weird, but when this was announced, it kind of made a little bit of sense to me. I think a lot of it is that they need to get some more adventure content out there quickly, and their initial hesitation, and justified or not, probably more justified, going into making a fantasy game of this scale isn't really done. And so coming in with an adventure path and staggering them like they did meant that it's been an entire year, 1 full year of just the one adventure, and it's the only adventure except for the society stuff. And that can burn out. I mean, so going to the 2 will let them very rapidly get bam, bam, 2 more adventures for the game. Really interesting, some of the hints towards what the 2nd one might entail that we were talking about. And Starfinder does not have a modules line that Pathfinder had before it even launched. The modules existed before Pathfinder was even a game. So by the time Pathfinder came out, it had 3 full adventure paths, 4 full adventure paths under its belt. It had a slew of independent standalone adventures ready to go, many of which were multi-formatted. Like these 3 APs of just this level to this level is no different than, say, the Crypt of the Everflame arc that it goes through, or the Kobold arc that was one of the first arcs in the Game Mastery modules, which were the first Pathfinder adventures ever published.
And if you want to stretch it out, Dungeon Magazine was produced by Paizo. 3.5 dungeons. That's like, it was super easy to port over to Pathfinder. So you basically had infinite content. And like Eric was saying, a fantasy, like different fantasy RPGs still have the same basis of these are the main fantasy elements, whereas every science fiction RPG kind of has to rebuild. These are the aliens. This is what this world is, this galaxy, this whatever, the setting. And so there really is no other Starfinder content. There cannot be other Starfinder content other than what third-party publishers are releasing as of the release of Starfinder.
And even if you don't intend to use or run through the adventures as a GM, it's incredibly helpful to have a giant, professionally done example of this is how you do it. This is an example of what an adventure is supposed to look like. Now, so whether or not you use this adventure, go out and write your own, you now have at least an idea of what the basics are, or what we consider the intended play style for this game to be. And if you just launch a game without something like that to go with it, then, man, the GMs are going to have a much, much harder time. Which is why I think any game launching at all needs to launch with at least one adventure to show how on earth this thing is supposed to be organized and played.
Yeah, because even if you come at it as a veteran Pathfinder player, you don't know how to run ship-to-ship combat. Like, not just the rules, but you don't know narratively how that's supposed to flow, how long a ship combat is supposed to take, what non-combat encounters you can have with the ship. And again, having published content really helps give you context for those options.
And this is why I've been super thankful for Society, and I really cringe at the people who say that they don't want to be playing any organized play, because first, Pathfinder organized play has always been a step above typical organized play up until it launched. It's got a ton of role playing in it. Like there are about 1 in 3 Society scenarios can be done with like 1 or 2 combats, and the majority of them are role playing based and puzzle solving based. And then and that's super true for Starfinder. The one of my favorite ones is 103. I forget the name of it off the bat, but you go down to an alien planet, and it's an episode of Star Trek. You're interfacing with these aliens, trying to figure out what the big mystery is that's going on, learning about these cultures, and it's so much about discovery and exploration and exploring the real possibilities of a sci-fi game beyond let's shoot things with lasers. And yes, we need the let's shoot things with laser moments because, we've got lasers, let's use them. But without the Starfinder Society adventures, along with what we've seen from the adventure path, it would be very hard to see the structure of what this is. And at least with Society, we just off the top of my head of the ones I've run, you've had a heist scenario, you've had a really cyberpunky noir-like scenario on a desert planet, you've had a super Star Trek-y scenario, you've had a horror on abandoned spaceship aliens type scenario, just really exploring all the different genres and how they can be implemented using what the game is. And without that material, I would just be lost and hopeful for other creatives to show us like what the real strengths of the system can be.
Now, this definitely got me thinking back to the adventure paths I've been a part of, and wondering if they had been less than 6 parts, how would that have affected it? And immediately I'm thinking Kingmaker should never have been 6 parts, because the kingdom building section took up only a certain amount of page count, but took up so much more time. So Kingmaker is automatically the longest campaign that they've released, like as far as time it takes to play through, just because this subsystem is one of the more robust subsystems and it's reused throughout the entirety of the campaign. So that's something that really could have benefited from being like four parts with a lot of this open-ended subsystem that would also be leveling you up and would be just engaging you as players through things other than just more page count content.
Yeah, and there's a lot of room for exploration, especially since the module line has sort of been dialed back as much as it has been to only occasional releases and only these super module one-offs that they've been producing, which they're great. It was a nice change of pace when they started coming out, but that did leave a hole where you only had these super short form adventures coming out from the society stuff, which designed to be played in a single session, and you could link several of them. Fantastic adventures could be linked together for some really great multi-part adventures, but you're dealing with something that's super short form and episodic. And then the other option at the time was these monumental campaign-long dedications. And so there's been a hole there. So I can see that if Paizo let Pathfinder explore that space a bit, it would not be a bad thing. I think having 3-episode arc adventure paths, especially if they design them like I think they're hinting at, where they're more modular, so you have like a low tier one and a high tier one, so that you can slot them in to still keep the full character arcs. And it also opens up being able to insert some of the single adventures into this. You're not like, well, I love Reign of Winter, but these characters that were designed and are in my Reign of Winter game, Reign of Winter is all they will ever know. That is all those characters will ever explore. The entire wealth and breadth of Pathfinder is forever closed off to them, because they, especially in Reign of Winter, because you know how that one goes. It is just this. They differ from society characters so much because in society the characters are able to explore humongous parts of the world. They're in the jungle, they're in the desert, they're up in Transylvania land, they're exploring Nymeria with this robot scorpions, because I can't not mention robot scorpions anytime I get a chance to. It's just, those characters are very real, and the attachment to those and the amount of breadth and development that is capable of a character who's seen the world. It's much like in real life. The traveling the world changes you and exposes you to different cultures, and is so important to be exposed to different cultures. And characters that are forced to go through just the one experience that is their entire lifetime don't get that chance. So if there were 3-episode arcs, you could do a 3-episode arc that goes from this level to this level, and maybe before you even start that, you're in a couple of low-level adventures in one area, and when it's over, there's a 2-episode adventure arc that you pulled from the game mastery module line to run on through. Or maybe the GM, a newbie GM, it's easier to say, I'm going to write this couple of levels worth of adventure to insert between the published material, and get my feet wet for the first time in exploring my own content, as opposed to just running the Paizo published content.
Owen Casey Stevens on his Facebook wall also had some interesting insight from the Paizo point of view, where he's been in meetings where there's an adventure idea that everyone agrees is cool, but it's not 6 adventures cool, but it's too big for a module. It's too big for a Pathfinder Society scenario. So it's just too cool to exist, but not cool enough to exist in the one long form format that they have. And so turning things into trilogies or quadrologies every couple of years, I think could really start exploring some cool, interesting stories that don't necessarily have to end at like near epic level or in like where it gets really high level. And like chat's largely been talking about, and Erik Mona mentioned, is that there's just less pressure to finish 6 adventures in the same setting, the same, like you were talking about the character point of view, that's all the characters know, but it's also, if you're not playing Pathfinder Society, you as a player, that's the only part of Galarian that you know for over a year usually.
Yeah. And also, it really limits the kind of stories they can tell. The adventure paths have been fantastic for kind of encapsulating and fleshing out what is the experience of D&D. But as far as like coming up with a story, you're stuck with the same situation of you have to start the story with a bunch of scrappy, low-level nobodies that become demigods over the course of a year. And those stories can be great, but there's only there's so many other types of stories to tell that can't be fit in that mold of tiny little nobodies become powerful.
Yeah, I've often considered just running Dragon's Demand for a group, ending them at 6th level, starting a new AP, and just saying, like, we're just going to power through the first 2 volumes of this AP. You're not going to get any XP for it, but you'll get the story, and you won't have to worry about this starting at the same starting point every single time. Also because I'm really interested in running Dragon's Demand.
Dragon's Demand, man, I want to run Dragon's Demand so much.
Yeah. And I think that's the attitude. That's the reason we don't have more modules.
Well, I'm looking. I want to see. Like, I wouldn't mind. You know what would be interesting, even beyond this, is what if? Get this.
I'm listening.
Starfinder's been releasing every other month for its thing, and that's usually about the time it takes to get through a module. It takes about 2 months to get through at regular once a week 4-hour play, taking into account the occasional cancellation. It takes about 2 months to get through a single volume of an AP. Now with Starfinder it's a little different because they're shorter. It takes a little bit, it's easier to get through them.
You're talking about page count wise?
Yeah, the adventures themselves are a little bit shorter than the Pathfinder adventure. And Starfinder is also a lot more streamlined of a system. The combats go faster, so there's less time in encounters and more encounters to go through. But let's just assume that the 2 month time frame still was accurate. Okay, let's just go with that as my assumption. If it was, what if they staggered? Here is volume 1 of War for the Crown. The next month is volume 1 of Ostog the Unslain's epic beer tale, and then War for the Crown Volume 2, Ostog Part 2, War for the Crown 3, Ostog Part 3, War for the Crown 4, Valeros gets his groove back Part 1, and then and like, what if they staggered them like that? So you'd have a good variety every single month. It wouldn't be a solid 6 months of nothing but one type of content coming out.
All right. So speaking from a practical point of view, it does front load all of the graphic design because launching an AP has more like technical needs from Paizo than continuing an AP. Like that's, am I making myself clear? I think I felt like I stumbled on my words there. Yeah. So you need to figure out the graphic design. You need to figure out which iconics are going to be in it and then start designing the artwork that's going to go along with that. So it's not that it's more work. It's just that it's shifting all that work to the beginning of a new AP cycle. And if you're suggesting, and I don't know if this was part of your suggestion, that you would have 1 6-part and then you would have 2 3-parts, or were you just saying willy-nilly we'll split them?
Well, no, I was saying that there'd be 2 3-parts and a 6-part over the course of the year, but but they would be every other month would be the 6-part. And then the 3 parts would fit in the slots in between. Okay.
So, yeah, so let's see. Any which way we look at it, doing those 3 parts will have more graphic design needs.
Right.
So it really would just be that 2 months back-to-back would have a little more pressure on the art team. And I suppose that's really it. No, Param, I think this is a pretty functional suggestion you've come up with.
Yeah, but would it be better? I think it would be better because a lot of the complaints you always hear is that if you're not interested in what the AP is about that year, then not only is that AP line, 6 months you have to wait before you might be interested in the next one, but all the tie-in products are usually also flavored to the same thing you've already said no thanks to. I don't say no thanks to any of them, but you know, I understand that
some people don't
might
buy
not
everything.
some people might not be interested in, you know, all the APs. But that's a complaint we've heard again and again. I think that just staggering them like that and just having a variety of content constantly would help alleviate that.
But let's say I was interested in AP A from that year, but not B. Could I subscribe to just A and only get an AP every other month? Like, would it effectively have to have, no?
Because business-wise, no way on earth they do that.
Yeah.
Because you subscribe to the AP line. That's what you subscribe to. And it wouldn't
Captain
make any
Ultra.
sense.
Oh, go ahead.
It wouldn't make any sense at all for them to change that up. I mean, just the logistics involved in the I want this but not this is just insane. And also remember, they use the APs as sort of their rudder and their backbone. They're like their steady income that basically makes it possible for Paizo to exist.
Now, Captain Ultra has another point, that it would ruin your shelves.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
Do you display them in volume order? Do you display them in adventure path order so that it's like, it's kind of like when you're driving down the street and all the odd neighbors are on one side and the even neighbors are on the other side?
Mm-hmm. It would totally ruin the shelves, but that kind of makes me want it more.
Make it like a neighborhood. Just have shelves on opposite sides, so that
I got a
you can
game
just
room. Why
alternate.
not do that? Well, what I mean, they could just change how they do the numbering. They could just have the numbering would change with that official launch, where you just have AP 13. Or what one are we on even? It's not 13. There's more than
we're
that.
on volume 130, I believe Eric said, and so 130 divided by 6 is 20. No, are they on? Have there been 20 APs?
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
I feel like we've come to this revelation not too long ago, and every single time it just feels like a whole new revelation.
20 APs would be 120, and they've passed that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're what, at 23?
So they're on like 22.
Yeah. So this is AP 24 Volume 1 is how they would number them from that point on. And then the next one would be AP 25 Volume 1. And so that way the shelf would stay intact because they would slot right as they came out. It would break the numbering system, but to be completely fair, it was kind of silly to launch a product with a numbering system like that. I mean, it was just a continuation. It was their dedication, in my opinion. I don't have any background or sourcing on this one. It was just their continuation of, see, this is still just like Dungeon. We are really good at writing Dungeon, and it was just continuing that theme. But in all honesty, in all practicality, that's not a good idea for a continuing product like that.
Yeah, but I mean, comics did it for years, and they were doing it at the time.
Oh yeah,
let's
talk about comic numbering.
500.
Sure, let's spend a little bit of time talking about comic numbering. Which number 1 of Miss Marvel is it this week?
Yeah. When they were doing the all new, all different, there was,
oh my gosh,
like on Squirrel Girl #1, there was like like anyway, like a promo box saying like our second volume 1 this year. And it was like, it was the only comic that was taking the absurdity of it all and just putting their tongue in their cheek about it.
Oh, it's so perfect. Also, it looks like Hero Lab is out for Starfinder. Some bit of news. We'll talk more about that.
What? Oh, sorry. Out as in released.
Yeah.
Not as in like they've pulled out.
No. You can actually sign. You can pay money and use it now. We'll talk more about.
And
Hero.
this is the website-based subscription now, right?
Yeah, and we'll talk more about it on No Direction Beyond.
Okay, good. Because yes, I wasn't prepared for that. I was so not prepared that I took it as the exact opposite announcement you were making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they did not shut it down. That would be, oh my gosh, man, Hero Lab shut down. That would be crazy. There would be some sort of apocalypse enacted. I mean, at this point, like, I think even the majority of Paizo staffers love it to make your monsters with. Man, trying to make Pathfinder NPCs without Hero Lab, I don't want to do that. I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, but you don't even like making monsters the right way.
Oh, Ryan, I've made plenty of monsters the right way. It's only through 20 years of dedication that I have learned to loathe it.
Oh, that was my favorite part of the interview when Erik
it was
almost
like
condescendingly is imitating me.
But he started going line for line through. If any of our Discord chat, that was just line for line the Discord chat we just had yesterday, to the point that where there was one point where it was it takes 45 minutes to make this monster for 2 abilities, and that's word for word and the exact time frame and the exact number of abilities I used for my counter argument.
All right, Param, I think we are covered all of the news right now. It's been a slow news time, although those 2 big news moments, those 2 big news stories were pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
We got a little time for a little bit of banter, don't we?
Yes, let's banter.
All right, we are wrapping up Volume 3 of Hell's Rebels, and then who knows when we're going to do Volume 4, because Jeff has a baby due in the next couple of weeks, and he's the GM.
Oh, boy. That's going to change some stuff.
Yes, and Jay and I are the 2 fathers in the group, and Jay was implying that he will have no time and will get no sleep and whatnot. And look, it's different for every baby. I just happen to have 2 girls that are great sleepers, and I happen to be an extremely good sleeper, which just makes me sleeping through the night. Actually, I'm sleeping better now as a father because I'm on a regular sleeping schedule of go to sleep 10 or 11 and wake up around 6, and I just feel amazing because of it. But I'm willing to accept that I'm an exception.
What in the world does 6 a.m. even look like?
Well, actually, this morning there was a blood moon and a blue moon at the same time for an hour, and I just happened to wake up at the right time to have seen it if I, had the drive to actually get outside and find wherever the moon was still visible in the sky, because it wasn't visible from my my window. But it could have been cool.
I had to mute myself because the dogs were going crazy.
Oh, that's fine. You also went out of focus for a second.
Yeah, I forgot to turn. No, I forgot to turn the autofocus off on this camera because it was crashing my system for a minute there. And there goes the dogs again. Oh man, I cannot wait until this winter lets me go back into the game room. I mean, that is a freezing place during the winter. I need to, I insulated it extremely well. Okay, so it is extremely cost effective to heat that thing, but it's still more than 0.
Yep. Yeah. 0 Fahrenheit. That's extra cold, isn't it?
I meant more than $0 involved in heating this whole separate building in order during the winter. So for the winter months, that's usually why you guys see me back in the office instead of in the game room for the winter months. But I've got a cool backdrop this time, so it's awesome this way. But yeah,
and it's not just recording. Do you not game in the game room during the winter?
We game in the game room, but I usually just heat it up for that day and then turn it off.
What do you call it? Not a pocket heater, but just a standalone heater.
No, man, you've seen the game room. It has a fireplace.
Oh yes, of course. I don't know. That could have been a facade.
No, I wasn't going to put a fake fireplace in there. Well, it's a fake fireplace, but it's a real fake fireplace. I'm not actually burning wood in it, but yeah, it's a legit fireplace meant to heat houses. Yeah, and a real air conditioner. And that whole place is done right, man. I did not skimp on the game room. I knew I was going to get one chance in my life to build my best game room. You get multiple chances to build a game room.
Sort of. I mean, I don't have the vision that you had that made that game room. If I had the time and the money and the skill, I don't know if I could make the game room.
There's a dollar store budget version of the game room that could have existed, and it can exist in your house, Ryan. Do you want to try and commit to making the dollar store version of my game room? You can always take it down.
Again, because I need a vision, and like house design is not one of my skills.
You see, this is why you have me. And
Okay.
and
So you want to design it?
I want to help you design it.
Okay.
And there's also going to be content for the show. And you can always
That's
just
true.
take it down if you don't like it. Commit. This is a blind commitment. This is something they ambush you on TV.
So when I get the new house,
Yes.
if there is a nice isolated section of the basement, that would make for a good thematic game room. Because keep in mind, I have all my board games and stuff.
Right.
So I don't want it to be so one kind of game room that I can't in good conscience play Anachrony or something in my fantasy tavern in the basement.
You're putting way too many
stuff.
asterisks on this, Ryan.
All right. Yeah, sure. I'll commit.
Excellent. And the pact is made.
So many witnesses
So
to my commitment.
Well, at this point, not too many because it's the live show. But as soon as I push this thing live onto the podcast, then it's just done.
Anyway, it's not like I don't want it. I love your game room. Your game room is amazing, and I am jealous of it and would be happy to have it. It's just questioning my ability to execute that kind of commitment.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is nowhere near
Lone
that
Dwarf
kind of
says
commitment.
Peer pressure wins the day.
Don't worry, this is nowhere near that kind of. We're talking about the dollar store version. the thing
right.
that was going to be like, I have $150 to spend, and this is what it's going to be, as opposed to the don't want to say how much that thing actually cost me in the end. Much more than the $1,000 I thought it was going to cost and budgeted for.
I also like that to you a dollar store budget is $150. Like you must have some epic dollar store shopping sprees.
Oh, I was just imagining, like, even a cup. If everything cost $1 and I want this to look good and trashy at the same time. Oh, Lone Dwarf say I need to
trying to get me to peer pressure you to commit to a 50% Starfinder retrofit of your room.
Oh, you don't even know, man. You don't even know.
Oh.
I can't do that. What you're thinking you can do, but there's an ulterior motive to this backdrop. You see, since it's sci-fi, the 50% that I need to commit is virtual. I'm going to virtually have a game room for no direction beyond. Also, the game room also doubles as my VR room anyway, so I push the table to the side and have a nice big open space. And I love VR. VR is awesome. I cannot wait until like a few years from now we're playing Pathfinder in VR. I did for the very first time I played Dark Souls, the Dark Souls board game. I wanted to test out like tabletop and VR. So I got the VR and I got the Tabletop Simulator, which supports VR, and I was able to play Dark Souls on a virtual table. And it looked like I was actually playing Dark Souls, which then I turned to my copy of Dark Souls sitting on my shelf and realized I could actually just play Dark Souls. But you're just like reaching out and picking up the pieces and moving it on a virtual table that doesn't really exist. And it was just all worked like it's supposed to. And it was just like, whoa, this could totally be amazing if everybody wants to have $1,200 computers and $800 VR headsets instead of just pencil and paper.
I'm not saying no, but I am doing some math.
Oh yeah, Mortundus is saying the tabletop sim is cool. There's even more Hammer 40K. I was playing BattleTech in it earlier.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, just like little bitty robots in little bitty city, and none of it's real anyway. Just like just like it was almost as if I was playing with real virtual, not real robots on styrofoam cities. Except my styrofoam was digital. And then I got to flip the table, and then I got to do something I can't do when I flip the table in real life. I got to hit back, and then the table was back to normal.
Someone actually shared with me recently a tabletop war game that's being played in a virtual tabletop or like a VR room, but you could walk through the tables.
Yeah, you totally can walk through the tables.
Oh, okay, so that's a standard feature?
Yeah, well, they can't stop you from walking in VR. So anything they put that's virtual in you have two options. Put a physical piece of furniture in the room to represent the table, which some people do. There's some really cool VR stuff where they do integrate with physical objects. Like there's a great Gundam VR experience where there's just a robot hand that you sit in, and then they put the VR helmet on, and the robot hand is like motorized, and the virtual thing is like a Gundam picks you up and walks you through a city as it battles giant robots, and that's kind of cool. But in virtual reality, you kind of go through objects because to do anything to not let you do that risks your safety. But you have to map out the room as well before you start, and so that when you get close to a real object or wall that you don't want to accidentally trip over, it puts a big like electric fence up in your view. It's like, no, really, warning, wall right here. I mean, I know you think the dungeon just keeps going through here, but wall. And I've done the typical thing everybody does in VR for the first time when you're like, oh man, I'm gonna lean against this table that's not there. That's fun the first time. I know that people have different experiences when using virtual reality, and I'm really looking forward to what it means for gaming and Pathfinder and role-playing games and board games and stuff like that. But it is absolutely convincing. At least, like, you stay in that for about 15 minutes or so, and then your brain just forgets there's a real world for a minute. Like like even though the graphics are kind of low poly and stuff, your brain just like, oh, the world's always just been look like a Super Mario 64 world. That's a real tree that is 4 polygons and a smiley face, but it's real. And so it got to the point where I was hanging out in VR and I was in like a movie theater and stuff, but I was actually here in the office with the lights out because I wanted to not have any light pollution. And I spent like hours in there, and I was like watching movies on a huge screen while like typing up show notes on a virtual screen that popped up to the side. And I'm just like lounging back doing that, but having like Crunchyroll anime streaming on a 400-inch monitor in front of me, and just like, having a good old time. And then I was like, okay, it's time to get back in the real world. I'm getting hungry. It's time to go get some lunch. I took the headset off, and I'm in this tiny little office, and it's dark, and I'm like, this is a shock. Oh my gosh, I can see how this could go so bad so quickly. There's a level of VR addiction they talk about in sci-fi novels, especially like Ready Player One goes into it. It's about to come out as a movie. And I can totally see that being 100% real. Especially if you need some escapism. The VR has got all the escapism you want. You can be anywhere you want to be for as long as you can keep that headset on. Morton is saying, give me Sword On Online. I'm ready to shed this crappy body.
And can you picture playing a Pathfinder game? Like, how would a Pathfinder game integrate with VR?
Dude, what if you could be your character? Like, you can do...
I am my character. I commit, Param.
Dude, like, you could just have your character's body on you. Mm-hmm. Okay? You would be your character's body. There's voice modulation software. You can sound like your character when you talk. You could be anything. You're a giant, and the other players are halflings. You're 20 feet tall, and they're 3, and the game can simulate that. Like, the VR chat right now is kind of exploring a lot of this ideas in space, and I know that there's a budding little role-playing community coming up in that, and it's kind of like Second Life, so also be wary about the role-playing opportunities involved there. But it's like you can build your own virtual worlds and like build your own characters and exist inside them, and there's not too much needed to turn that into the ultimate virtual LARPing experience, basically, without the need to actually put on a costume and go through foam bats in the park. You could have virtual bats. You could throw fireballs.
Virtual foam bats?
Yeah, you could. Dude, that's a VR game waiting to happen.
VR LARP?
Yeah, VR LARP. You can have tiny little foam fireball beanbags and throw them at people, and then you have to shout fireball before it registers. But you actually do that, and then when you throw it, the game recognizes you said fireball, and it just transforms the beanbag into a fireball. All right.
This went from a joke to something that, that could be a good transition into ways that you can play role-playing games online, or VR style.
And then the board games are even cooler, man. Like, I've seen some of the renditions of some of these board games where they animate the figures. So like you move the figure, you tell the figure to move on the table in front of you, but like the river is a real freaking river on the board, and it's got, and like the city, and like when you destroy a building with your tanks, the building crumbles and becomes rubble, and like can you just like emulating board games is one of the surprising aspects of VR that nobody expected going in, but it is so immersive, and it gets away from some of the traps of VR. Where you become motion sickness when you try to simulate movement in VR that you're not actually moving. There's a few solutions to that, but with the board games it doesn't matter. You're looking at a table as a static object and only moving your body as much as your body actually moves, so it works.
This weekend I played Nightmare with a VCR.
Ooh, you getting your tech on, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the future.
Where did you find a VCR?
We have a VCR. It's been in a box marked VCR. I guess it's back in the other room.
How did you get it to hook up to your TV?
So I happen to have an antenna in on the back of this TV. And yeah, so I plugged it in, and I'm like, well, now what do I do? I guess I have to turn to channel 3. Like it wasn't, I wasn't pressing the source button. I had to go channel 3, put the VCR in. It was skipping. I'm like, do I have to adjust tracking? That was a thing, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if I can do that anymore.
I know.
That was it. Was it fun?
We're at different technological levels. Yeah, it was actually way more fun than I expected it to be. I've played Atmosphere, which is like a spin-off of Nightmare. And I played it in French, and my girlfriend at the time had to translate for me because my French, once again, is only so-so. So, yeah, so I didn't have high hopes for this because I didn't enjoy playing Atmosphere. But playing Nightmare, there's a surprising number of things that are getting you engaged in the game. Specifically, there are cards that have time codes on them, and they're like, when you see this time code on the screen, you can react this way to get this bonus. And so you become extremely aware of what time is left in the game. And because it's all a timed game, and the closer you are to the finish, you know, the less time you have and the more stress it goes, it all works towards like making sure that you are following very closely with what is otherwise a roll and move game.
Interesting. You know, that's something that could be adapted into a virtual reality type situation too, right?
Yes, it could. And we can go no further down that avenue.
Okay, so we're not going to talk about that anymore. Also, what is really cool about the VR thing is you get to have a really cool headset on.
But I just want cardboard with a phone plugged into it.
Do not do that to yourself. Really do not. I mean, that's a kind of fun, neat thing, but do not kid yourself into thinking that experience is anything close to a real VR experience. I think that's really doing a disservice to the VR industry that those even exist, because people put those cardboard things on and they put their phone in there and they're like, ooh, this is cool, but it's kind of like, yeah, kind of janky. And the truth is that, no, it's not even close. When you have like actual tracked VR and you have hand controllers that are 100% accurate and your headset's on and your brain is completely full and the frame rate's high enough that your brain isn't making you throw up, and you're just there. I mean, generation 2 of these machines are going to come out soon with even higher fidelity on the graphics, which is the one downside they have, is like if you try to, you notice that when you try to read text that everything's a little bit fuzzy because there's only so many pixels that computers can push right now. So when the new headsets come with even higher resolution and they clear up the graphics so you can actually read books in VR, it's going to be an amazing experience. All right. Wrap-ups and shout-outs?
Yeah. Yeah, I got stuff to talk about. I don't have anything to shout out to, but yes, we can do wrap-ups and shout-outs right after this.
And we're back.
Thank you for joining us for episode 171 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. And thank you once again to Paizo's Chief Creative Officer and Publisher, Erik for joining us for an always enlightening interview. Mm-hmm. Before we go, a couple of things I want to bring people's attention to. In this case, it is network related.
Ooh.
Because I am running out of keywords, Param.
You need more words.
I need more words.
And where are you going to get them?
Well, I'm hoping the people will provide them. So if you are a regular listener, then by now you should know that we also have amazing blog content, which Param will tell you about shortly. Mm-hmm. But specifically, I write a blog called Keyword Design, in which I design a mundane item, a magic item, a feat, a spell, and a class option, all based on a single word. Like last week, the single word was singleton. And so it was all options based on doing it all by yourself or being completely by yourself. And it was great, and I had a lot of fun with it, but I'm down to the last 2 or 3 words. And at this point, I'm also doing the Behind the Screens blog, which is the GM Advice blog, and I am having a lot of fun with that, and I have a lot of ideas for the future. So we are at a tipping point, people. If you like keyword design and you want it to keep going, I need more words. Otherwise, I could just transition into making Behind the Screens weekly, and then you'll get a lot more GM advice and a lot less options. So really, the content that's on the website is up to you. You can share keywords by going into any of the keyword design articles and commenting, or in the Discord chat, just make sure you @ me so that I know to look for it. Or you can email nodirection@hotmail.com. You can go to our Facebook page. As long as you make sure it's clear that this is a list of words for keyword design, then I can add it to my keyword design document, and you'll be added to the mix. So again, the power is yours. If you want more keyword design, I need more keywords. It doesn't count if I make up my own keywords.
Nope. Get them in, guys. And you know where you can get them in?
No.
You could go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/nodirection. You can go to our email at nodirection@hotmail.com, which is another way again. You can go to our Discord server. Our Discord server is hopping lately. There are so many of you have joined that Discord server. It has been fantastic, and it keeps growing every single day I check. It's grown to the point to where it doesn't even tell the public how many people are on there. I have to actually go into the settings to see them now, because there are just so many of you that they don't want to put the offline on the screen anymore. And it's just so great a way to get in touch with us. So if you want to get to our Discord server, just go to our website, which you can also comment on the various blog articles, and commenting on keyword design would be a great way to suggest new keywords, at nodirectionpodcast.com. You can also watch us on YouTube at youtube.com/nodirectionshow. We had to use show there. No direction was taken. And other than that, you can just chat with us in the live chat. Like you awesome live chatters right now. They're doing such a great job. Speaking of the website, though, if you're only watching the shows, you're only getting half of the awesome content that No Direction has to offer. We have some fantastic blogs and writers, including Ryan here. I think I'm the only one on the network who doesn't have a blog. Not that I'm asking for one. No more work. But there's some fantastic, some excellent, some of the best writers in Pathfinder doing content almost every single day. You need to be reading those blogs, and it's all free at nodirectionpodcast.com.
I got 3 keywords from chat.
Awesome.
2 of which are weird, but 1 of which is spicy, and I like that.
I am not a slacker. I'm doing 2 of these podcasts right now, and I've got other stuff in the works that we're not talking about yet.
Oh yes. So about the other thing, do you know when people can start getting more hints about it? Since I've seen you dropping hints.
We're
in Discord.
just in the hint phase right now.
Okay.
There are some reasons why we're not getting more specific, but it's not that there isn't more details. It's just which ones are going to be that we can commit to before we start. But there's something very fun coming to No Direction very, very soon.
I'm looking forward to it, and I get to look forward to it as an outsider.
Ooh. Yep, Ryan's not on it.
All right, Param. I think we're done here.
We are done. All right, guys. You know how.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.